When setting up the batch tray, one of the most important things to get right is your deflector plate, which is your stainless steel plate in front. And you can loosen the knob and slide it up and down. And the goal of the deflector plate is to make sure that the leading edge of the piece gets deflected down slightly so that the trailing edge gets kicked down out of the way so that the next leading edge can come in over the top of it. If I'm too high, the product sits up too high and the next one coming out is going to hit it. And if I go too steep with it, I'm going to crash down too steep into the tray and it's going to slow it down and the next piece can catch up to it and also cause a jam. So there's no right or wrong position, but a good starting point is kind of line the stainless steel tray up so that it's even with the block on this edge right here. And then just test it, starting at a slower speed and making sure you're getting a good singulation and a good deflection. Okay, if the tray is set, if the deflector plate is set too low, two things can happen. One is if I'm way too low with the setting, the envelope's going to come out and actually hit it and not come out. And that's going to cause a jam in the feeder. If I'm too low on the deflection and I go down too steep, again I may hit a little too steep on the tray, which causes the envelope to slow down and the next one to catch it. Alright, so best way to set it up is to jog one into position and then bring it down so you're just barely bending it a little bit. And then you should be pretty close to where you need to be. And then test it at full speed. And your black product stops here, as you'll see in this application, we have added the additional weight on the back end. The back stops come pre-threaded with a hole. That's a 1032 screw. And you can add any 1032 screw and add an additional amount of weight. In this case, we just added a larger nut on the back side. And the reason we do that is when you're running more rigid product and it's coming out at full speed, it could make this bounce without that additional weight. The additional weight also helps in just making sure that it snaps back into place and stays there without bouncing too much. When setting up the overall tray height, meaning the distance these are from the discharge nose of the feeder, you should try to get a minimum distance to make the stack height that you need. Right? It is set up that you could accumulate up to 3 or 4 inches of product in here, but you should never set that up unless you're actually doing that kind of height of stack. You should set it up so that it gives you the minimum distance to allow you to accumulate the amount in. And the reason we do that is the farther the envelope or the farther the product needs to fall into the tray, there's potentially an issue of it not landing and settling correctly. So it just works better if you can get the product to come out and lay in there a little bit flatter than on a steeper angle. All right, so to make the adjustment, you just loosen your handle here and then you're able to slide this up or slide this down to get the correct height that you want it at, and you just lock in your handles. Okay. Alright, so in setting up your backstop for your product and positioning, you basically want to leave between the length of the product and here is between 1/4 to 1/2 inch. So you could be in here, okay. If you're out too much, 1 or 2 inches, the product's going to be really shingled out. You also have potential of catching your trailing edge of the product on the leading edge of the next product. So you do want to bring that in, and you don't want to be perfectly tight to it. You got to give it just a little bit of room. Lock that in, and you're going to be ready to go. Product width, you're going to just adjust your side guides here. So if I'm running a wider product, I can move out. If I'm running a narrow product, I can move that in. You always want to leave, 1/8 of an inch on either side of it, just to allow the product to come in out of the feeder correctly. Alright, so if you need to run a longer piece than what we're running right now, you will need to change a few things around to make that happen. So if I want to run a 12, 14-inch long piece, I can. I would have to remove the screws and handle from each side and move the plate into this set of holes. I would take this and I would move it to the back side by just loosening up my shaft, sliding it out, moving it around to this side. So now I can run a longer piece. Over time, potential exists that just make sure that your set screws stay tight on your collars here. You don't want this flag to come in contact with the prox sensor, right? Right now it's close and you can see that the yellow light is on, right? And the way it triggers is when this goes black, comes back on, goes yellow, that gives you the next signal to go. But if that makes contact with the prox sensor will break over time. So you just want to make sure that that's not making contact. And then, move over here. And then to keep it from bouncing too much, we do use the magnet against this flag. And over time, it's potential that that set screw might loosen up a little bit. So you just want to make sure that that stays tight. So if I'm running a wider piece and my trays are all the way out, there'll be a little bit too much sag in here, so we provide you the additional product supports that you just attach to the existing tray with your screw, and that just bolts in like that to support the wider piece.